Huge changes for the F1 cars in 2023. 2022 saw one of the biggest shakeups when it came to the technical regulations of the cars. However, 2023 is going to see some tweaks that are going to affect the performance of the cars massively on the track. Although the changes are not as big as they were prior to the F1 sport entering the 2022 season, they are still going to make a huge impact on how the car behaves and the performance of the top teams, which is why we are yet to see some surprises at the top of the grid. Obviously, teams such as Aston Martin and Mercedes have begun to work around the F1 regulations for the 2022 season. Although the 2022 regulation was thoroughly combed for years, it still missed something, and that's what the teams are going to try and capitalize on. For example, Aston Martin and Mercedes tried to bring a huge innovation to the front and rear wings, and although they were brought in as legal ones for the 2022 season, these designs were banned for the 2023 season due to the fact that they didn't meet the criteria set by the FIA. One of the biggest issues that the FIA is tackling for the 2023 season, or at least is working towards tackling by introducing new sets of regulations, is the porpoising issue. Mercedes' inability to fix the problem earlier in the season, like every other team, was a significant contributor to this narrative. Contrary to what they claim, Red Bull never had to deal with this issue because Newey was present in Formula 1 when the ground floor effect was first introduced. That is why Red Bull was not very fond of the new regulations and the rule tweaks, because they believed that the FIA was intervening in what turned out to be a one-team problem. Nonetheless, the regulations were enacted, and we will see F1 cars with a 15mm increase in ride height, a larger diffuser throat, and additional sensors for precise measurements of the porpoising. As it is, we are actually going to see a lot of changes for the 2023 season, and this could eventually mean that Ferrari and Mercedes are going to be much more competitive than they were in the 2022 season, especially Mercedes. The Brackley-based team struggled a lot with this phenomenon, and with increasing the ride height for every constructor out there, the ground is going to be leveled, and we're going to see much closer battles between the top three teams. And before we go deeper into the technical regulations, let us just remind you that we are going to see changes in the F1 calendar, with 6 instead of the 3 sprint races that were held in the 2022 season. On top of that, the FIA has refined the grid penalty pattern to help determine the starting positions of the drivers that are going to take new engine compounds after the mess that was applied to the grid in Monza. However, these will not have as much of an impact on the performance of the cars as the ones in the technical section of the F1 engineering marvels. Obviously, most of the teams have found a solution for the porpoising issues, which is why the 2023 regulations regarding the increased ride height and the increased diffuser throat now seem to be worthless. On top of that, the FIA has added a new tyre compound, meaning that the hard compound tyre is going to be even harder in the 2023 season. Ferrari and Red Bull have completed a few tests in Abu Dhabi in 2023 after the season has officially ended with the revised floors, indicating that the 2023 season will see significant changes in this regard. The teams are going to implement a lot of changes for the 2023 season, and one of these changes is in the floor design, now that the floor will be raised an additional 15mm off the ground. These changes are going to redirect the airflow that was headed towards the rear tyre and completely change the downwash, probably with the aim of getting more of the downwash onto the diffuser. McLaren went one step further than Ferrari, designing a floor that is very similar in edge to Red Bull's, which is why we are likely to see a much more competitive version come out of the Woking-based team. However, the floor edges of Red Bull and McLaren were very simple, and to be honest, these edges will become much more complex as the season progresses. As we've seen in 2022, simple is not good enough, and Mercedes' simple floor just wasn't enough to stop the porpoising, not even lowering it a single bit. Another interesting fact that is going to be applied from 2023 onward is the weight of the cars, with the minimum weight now being decreased by 2 kilograms. Many cars have struggled with this, and with the additional weight lost, cars will have a bit more difficulty keeping up with this weight interval. This change came after the 798 kilogram weight was revised at the beginning of the 2022 season, and now the FIA believes that an additional 2 kilograms can be shed off the minimum weight of the car for the next season. Obviously, this is something that the teams have met with a lot of joy, due to the fact that they struggled a lot to keep their cars at the 798 kilogram minimum weight. Following the Silverstone crash, in which Zhou escaped with only a few bruises after a terrifying turn and roll onto the safety net, the FIA is now implementing a roll bar modification. Obviously, this was something that was desperately needed after how Zhou's car turned upside down, and apart from the roll bar and the halo system being perfectly safe, an F1 car shouldn't turn like that at all. A component in the roller proved unable to withstand the impact of the crash and broke off as a result, luckily without damaging Zhou's health. The F1 2023 cars are going to see some changes when it comes to the rear mirrors, mostly because they are a very important thing in the driver's ability to drive the car and make decisions about how it behaves on the track. The mirrors, however, provide a very small amount of aerodynamics to the car, but they create a lot of problems that desperately need to be addressed for the 2023 season. It goes without saying that bigger rear mirrors are usually a good thing, because you're able to see more behind you and act better when it comes to defending yourself from an attack. As of now, the size and position of the mirrors are fixed, but there is still something that can be worked on, and that is the housing of the mirror. Aston Martin was one of the teams that tested a new mirror at the Dutch GP, and this mirror simply demonstrated that the housing is not an easy solution to bring when it comes to mirrors. While many think that the fuel temperature changes are not an important change that is going to see the light of day in 2023, they are very wrong. During the 2022 season, fuel temperature issues arose multiple times, especially with Red Bull, which retired in the first 2 of the 3 races with Verstappen. In 2022, the temperature of the fuel was not supposed to be higher than 20 degrees Celsius, while in 2023 the temperature was not supposed to be more than 10 degrees below the ambient temperature. This eventually means that the volume of fuel will be reduced, which means that F1 cars will now run with more fuel than in the 2022 season. There are going to be changes in the tyres that are going to be used throughout the qualifying sessions, and through 2 qualifying sessions in 2023, drivers are going to use different amounts of tyre compounds. For example, in these 2 qualifying sessions in 2023, drivers are going to have 4 sets instead of 8 sets of fresh, soft compound tyres, and the number of medium and hard compound tyres is going to be increased from 3 to 4. Overall, each set of qualifying will require the drivers to use a different set of tyres, making the battlefield even more level than it was previously. Obviously, wet tyres are something that desperately needs to change, because aside from Suzuka and Monaco, we didn't see any races in 2022 that were raced on full wet tyres. The tracks were either suspended or held until the drivers could mount the intermediate tyres. Nevertheless, the full wet compounds were too slow, and with the new changes for the 2022 season, the amount of spray that was created by the cars has increased a lot. What do you think about the new changes and the new regulations for 2023? Let us know in the comments below.